Okay, topic number two. This is a topic that I knew was something that I was going to need to talk about on my channel at some point. It's the topic of violence. And obviously, we have a lot of violence in our world, whether that's the conflicts in Ukraine or Israel and Gaza, or it's violence like shootings, school shootings, for instance, or the killing of a healthcare CEO, or the killing of lawmakers on either side of the spectrum, or attempted killings of lawmakers on either side of the spectrum, or more recently, the killing of a prominent political influencer and activist. Um, and it's something where I think we need to really address what it is that I think God says about how all of this should be handled. Now, just to be clear, I want to make sure that there's a couple of disclaimers here. First of all, there's a lot of topics connected with this topic. So if at any point you're like, what about this thing over here or that thing over there or anything like that? Chances are I probably just haven't gotten to it yet because this is only topic number two. The other thing is that I recognize that violence and this subject can be a bit dicey when it comes to talking about Christianity and the Bible and God, because there is a fair amount of violence in the Bible, to say the least. Particularly in the Old Testament, I would say. Um, some of that is violence that was done as a form of self defense, such as David slaying Goliath in defense of Israel against the Philistines. Some of it was violence in defense of people who were being taken advantage of, such as Israelite slaves in Egypt, and with the 10 plagues and everything that happened along those lines. Okay. So some of the violence is something that at least a lot of us would consider, okay, that makes at least some sense, right? But then, of course, there's other forms of violence in the Bible that, for a lot of us, even myself included, don't make as much sense and it's harder to understand. And I don't have the full answer to that. And if I ever get to a place where I have a better answer, I'll be happy to share it with you. But I recognize that there are some forms of violence in the Old Testament that um, don't exactly fly well in today's culture, and for understandable reasons. So I'm not here to say like I'm trying to justify those instances of violence. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to simply say that I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that, as seen in the person of Jesus, God is not someone who, certainly generally speaking, promotes violence. And we see this in a variety of different contexts. For instance, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus is about to be arrested by guards, one of Jesus' disciples, Peter, takes a sword and cuts off the ear of one of the guards. Jesus, in response, heals the guard, and then he also says to Peter, drop your sword. And he says, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. So if you've ever wondered, if you've ever heard that phrase and wondered where did that come from, that's where it comes from. Now, it's important to recognize that Jesus is not saying those who live by the sword deserve to die by the sword. He's not saying that. He's saying those who live by the sword, if that's the way that you're going to live, chances are the consequence that's going to come from that is that that's how you will also die. And it was an encouragement to Peter to not be violent. Okay? But I think some of the biggest examples of God not being one to promote violence and promoting things against violence, I could think of a couple of instances, a couple of big instances. One of them is in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus gives the context of, you've heard it was said that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So basically, if someone violates you, bring about justice. in the form of potential violence or some kind of reparation, right? Some kind of punishment, right? And Jesus goes on, he says, "But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." So in other words, now that Jesus is here and doing what he's doing and sacrificing his life on the cross eventually, now that he is doing that / has done that, this creates a bit of a shift in terms of how we are meant to approach other people, including our enemies. So that's one example. We're supposed to pray for them. We're supposed to love our enemies, right? Not in the sense that we like them, but in the sense that we give them compassion and kindness. The other instance comes from one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and it comes in Matthew chapter 9. Some religious leaders come up to Jesus. They see him dining with people whom they consider to be lesser than. They mention tax collectors, they mention prostitutes, and then sinners. And the religious leaders are like, "Jesus, why are you spending time with these people? Why are you eating with these people? That's not what you should be doing." And Jesus' response is essentially, "Look, I've come to help people, and I'm going to help the people who actually recognize that they need my help. I have come to heal the sick," is what he says, not heal the healthy, is basically what he's saying. And then he quotes a verse from the Old Testament. It's from the book of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 6. He says, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." Very powerful statements in my mind, because I want to pull out that verse, a couple of words from that verse, and really attempt to understand what Jesus is saying in that verse. So the first word is the word that is translated into mercy. That word is chesed. Chesed also has the meanings of steadfast love and loving kindness. And we're not just talking about, being kind and loving and, that kind of a thing. We're talking about like a deep, committed sense of loyal kindness and compassionate love towards another person. Just like the Hebrew word shalom doesn't just simply mean peace and lack of violence. Okay, so there's this much deeper meaning when it comes to the compassion that he is suggesting here. The other word is the word that is translated into sacrifice. That word is zabach. By the way, if I'm butchering either of the pronunciation of these words, let me know. I don't intend to. Zabach also has an alternate meaning, and that meaning is slaughter. So another way that you could read this verse is Jesus is saying, "I desire steadfast, committed, loyal kindness, compassion, and love, not slaughter." So when we approach people in the sense that, I feel like it would just be better off if this person weren't alive or things like that, that is not what the Bible teaches us. Certainly not the New Testament. The New Testament teaches us to love people, to love our neighbors, to love our enemies and pray for them, to be kind to them. We all have needs, and those needs are not about whether or not a person deserves them or doesn't deserve them. You don't deserve or not deserve breathing, or food, or water, or going to the bathroom, or sleep. Those things are not deserved or not deserved. Just take going to the bathroom as an example. Assuming everything is working properly, and assuming you've ate and drank recently, no amount of you trying to hold it in is going to prevent your body from eventually evacuating that stuff out of your body. It's just going to happen. Whether you deserve it or not is irrelevant. Your body just simply needs to do that. And for any one of our needs, for food, for water, for shelter, for sleep, for belongingness, for safety, for respect, any of those things. We all need those things. And denying someone the meeting of those needs, say, oh, you don't deserve to live, you are playing God. And you can watch so many different forms of media or read several different books, and you get the idea that anytime someone decides to play God, it doesn't work out. The story of Frankenstein, Lex Luthor in the most recent Superman movie, any array of different ways of seeing people playing God, it does not work out, and it is not healthy. I understand wanting to rid the world of evil, ending life, engaging in violence, determining whether or not a person deserves to live or die. That is not the way to go about it, both from a general standpoint and particularly from those of us who are Christian. The Bible calls us to a better standard than that, those of us who are Christian. I'm not going to say that those of you who aren't Christian should be held to the same standard, because you don't have the same beliefs as we do. I get that. But even just from a general standpoint of being human, it does us no good. Speaking as a mental health therapist, it does us no good to be apathetic towards our fellow human beings. There are a lot of things that this video has probably raised at this point. Again, for the sake of being concise, I'm going to keep it as streamlined as possible, and I'm going to stop there. I invite you to leave comments, to ask questions. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and God bless.